It is an honor to be here with you. I want to start off by saying that I have a history of disabilities. And every time I say that, I think that I'm being ultra vulnerable, but I'm becoming stronger every time. What you see in the bio is where I am today. But I'm going to share with you my journey in arriving here. And what I'd like to do, because I know you've gone through a series of workshops, and thank you for being here, by the way. What I'd like to do is put the asset, which is this population of talent, of capability, of loyalty, before the technicalities. You've heard about the technicalities, the accommodations. Now I want us to shift and pivot to making sure that we're realizing the asset. So I'm going to share 3 stories to place a humanizing touch on all of this. And then I'd like to reinforce some core values in this brief talk. The first is I am and we are. The second is to think beyond the disability. And the third core value wrapped up into these stories is to move this ship, this allyship, forward. So the first story, and by the way, Noel, great message, and thank you for those insights. Thank you very much. Inspiration in action. The first story is somebody that you probably have heard about, but I don't know if you know the full history behind United States Senator Tammy Duckworth. She's a United States Senator from the great state of Illinois. So how many of you know the whole story, right? Okay, so I'm going to embellish a little bit on her story because I call that inspiration in action. So Tammy Duckworth is from Thailand. Her father, U.S. Marine veteran, and her mother from Thailand. Her father met her mother during deployment. Anyhow, when the family faced struggles after her father's service, he decided to come back to the U.S. But there was a problem. Mom was to be separated 6 months before reunited with Tammy and the family. Sound familiar? So that put a big stress on the family. But this young woman had so much aspiration, had so much determination. What was short in money was high in commitment. And so she went on to have a great academic career. And then she enrolled in the Army Reserves. And then she had that opportunity of a lifetime. What position can I get in the Army, in the armed forces, where I, as a woman, get equal treatment and equal pay? How far can I go? And she found it. And it was becoming a helicopter pilot. Well, how good was she? Pretty darn good. She graduated number 3 out of 40. And guess what? The top 3 were eligible for the Black Hawk helicopter, which is the mountaintop. So she became a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And then the opportunity came when we needed a deployment in Iraq. And they were not going to give the opportunity to Tammy, but she said, I must be deployed with the other men going on this mission. So she was. And then the unthinkable happened. She was co-piloting a Black Hawk, and a grenade exploded during one of her flights as a co-pilot in the cockpit. She was laying for dead, but she was not. Both of her legs were amputated. But that didn't stop Tammy. Fast forward, she became politically motivated and ultimately became the first female disabled veteran in the United States House and now in the Senate. So you want to think about what's possible and think about an asset? Think about that asset. Double amputee. And now she is advocating for all of us who are disabled. Now a little bit about a story that is all too familiar and now real. It's my own story. I'm going to do this quickly, and I was able to do it in 5 minutes. Thank you. So let me just start off. I've had a convergence of bad news and tragedies, and they happened early on. And some of them I was not able to face until my 40s. And so I'll start off with this. I was molested as a child for 4 years of my life that I put away in a box. And I said, I never want to go there again. But I kept it with me. And I became angrier and resentful every year that passed, every single day that passed. I could not shake it out of my mind. So this followed me as a teenager, as someone going to college, somebody that was introduced to alcohol. And ultimately, I didn't realize that this was just building and building and building. So I started suffering from mental impairment and mental health issues. This continued and evolved into depression. All while I was graduating from honors from college, starting my career on Wall Street. By the way, I'm from a farming community in the Texas Panhandle, had no mentorship, but there I was on Wall Street, my dream of racing up those escalators. But literally where my world was headed was a collision. And the ultimate collision occurred. One night on my birthday, with all this going on in my head, add a drug addiction on top of the depression and the mental health issues. I drank too many margaritas that night with Everclear. Luckily, I was not the driver. I was in the passenger seat, and I jumped out of a moving vehicle that was going 30 miles per hour. And so I don't remember any of this, but I shattered the lower portions of my right leg. Ligaments, everything. Somehow, this rambunctious, rebellious person found a way to walk on all that, and so I was just destroying that right leg even more. Somehow I changed outfits, or whatever you want to call it, and became a belligerent mess. 2 years later, after a series of surgeries and wound care treatment and the fear of losing my right leg, I somehow endured all of that. But it's not somehow, it was faith. You know, faith is a strong belief in someone or something. For me, it's faith in God. But for others, it could be faith in something strong, right? So I latched on to that because I was taking a bath literally with a popcorn bin and a scrubber. And I was doing that for 2 years. But what you heard earlier today, I was right in the middle of a promotion when that occurred, to becoming one day soon the CEO of a bank. I've been promoted to number 2 when this accident occurred. So what we talked about, someone referred to it, about overcompensating. I think it was right over here, right? Overcompensating those factors. I was in essence facing a disability. So I thought, you know what? Oh my gosh, you're going to take that promotion from me. I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to, I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but I literally started stressing myself out about how I was going to make it to that CEO level. At the same time, I was suffering from isolationism. and I was coming out as a gay male. All of it together. This could have definitely taken me south. But instead, I found the strength. I found the strength to graduate from wound care, and I found the strength to carry on. But it wouldn't have been possible without an allyship, what you all are here for. For me, I have the pleasure of talking to some peer disabled men and women who really understand what I'm talking about. We might be enduring, I'm not going to use the word suffering, enduring through different conditions. But we're an asset. We're an asset. And for those of you who are allies, I couldn't have made it through that experience to be asked to come to the White House 7 times in my career, to become a national leader for the Latino and Latina business community across the country, to become this advocate, to be in this position today to work closely with Stanford and have a history with the University of Notre Dame and the University of Texas at Austin. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my partner sitting right there on the front row, who a lot of my belligerence and violence was, he witnessed it all. You witnessed it all. And you knew in your heart that that was not Mark Madrid. A lot of people would have walked away. And you saw so much. And I don't want to feel like my lifetime is devoted to making it up to him. I want to feel like we have moved forward together, so I don't have to carry those feelings. I've had enough feelings to carry around. Guilt, shame, feeling less than, feeling isolated, feeling like I have nowhere to turn. And so let me get back to the leg injury and I've talked about all the depth of the hurt. But let me talk about what has happened since. I became a competitive runner in my head. I said, you know what? I like the feeling of entering these 5Ks and 10Ks and half marathons. And then I said, you know what? Even though one leg is longer than the other now, because of all the distress and all the surgeries, and I still wear these boots. But I decided that no longer was I going to hold these barriers, right? These, like, breaking glass. What are we doing today? Breaking glass. So I decided I want to run a full marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And that was my new goal. And so because of allyship, because of confidence, I've been able to, in April, complete my first marathon. And here's the evidence of it right here. Yeah. I think it says finisher down on the bottom, right? So anybody who knows me well, it's my culture. I have my blanket. I have my Spider-Man blanket that I've had for over 30 years. And whether I feel terrible, whether I feel great, I always come home, especially after some of the demands that I have of running a nonprofit in the Silicon Valley. But I come home to my blanket. And now this is my favorite blanket. It's a reminder, right? And I use it for warmth. I use it for reinforcement. I use it because it's dependable. And I know it will always be there. It's my ally. I want you to think of yourself that way. When we're facing disabilities, we want people who we can depend on. We want people who will accept us. We want people to be tolerant and have unconditional love because we're an asset. And then the technicalities, the accommodations. And I'll be happy to report that this has happened in the last 4 months. So these are all the running medals. And I'm happy to report, and there's my rosary right there too. But I'm happy to report within these medals, there's also age group division championships and first and second and third place finish. And this is my favorite phrase, live a great story. Live a great story during the good times and the not so good times. So that's all we're trying to do. Some of us who are disabled, we're on a journey to really internally believe this. And we need your help. And we should not shove this to somebody else. We need to have a sense of urgency so that we can have some velocity. Because what we should envision is a marketplace of 100 tables out there. And I give it to Cindy and the team. Because you know what? I advocate hard for Latino and Latina business owners to have opportunities, a level playing field. But guess what? That is also translated into our African American communities, Native American, Asian American, and veterans, and disabled. But usually, you know what I hear? The disabled is always the one at the end. So I hope we can move that toward the front. And I'm just not talking about entrepreneurs, I'm talking about the workforce. So you've heard about Tammy, you've heard about my story, and I just cannot make this stuff up. You've heard on my reliance on faith. I'm keeping tabs on my time because I want to hear from you. This morning, I call my prayer line. It's back in Houston, Texas. Someone answered the phone. I know somebody is always going to answer the call, but in this case, humans sometimes don't answer this particular call. Somebody answered the call. And I said, you know what? I'm praying for a message from the heart without a teleprompter or any index cards, and that it's received well, because this means a lot to me, and it means a lot to them. And so this woman on the other line, they're supposed to stay anonymous, but her name's Shelley. She kept on asking me about this event. She said, who will be there? I said, well, I explained the audience. And she said, will the Workforce Commission be there? Will the Texas Workforce Commission? I said, well, this event is in California. And she said, will there be some community-facing folks there? I said, absolutely. It says corporate America, HR professionals. I'll have some peer disabled ladies and gentlemen in the audience as well, and advocates. Well, she kept on asking about this particular event. And finally, she was having a problem with her voice, I noticed. But I thought maybe she has a cold or something. So I want to talk about that part too. She finally said, I'm disabled. I'm disabled. I got hit by a drunk driver, and I was in a coma for 30 days. And I have brain aneurysms. I had to learn everything over again. How to hold a cup. How to hold a bar of soap. How to talk again. Vision impairment. Isolationism once again. And here was this person telling me about her comeback that started with forgiveness. Telling me about now that she works for the school district and she's volunteering for the prayer line. And by the way, she's a volunteer for the zoo. And she's worked her way up from working 4 hours a day to 6 hours a day. And what she shared with me is, Mark, I said, what would you like me to share with the audience now that we've broken through? This was the 50th minute on this call this morning that I thought was going to be 5. She said, I want people to look beyond the disability. And I want them to realize that some of us are the most devoted and committed people that you'll ever meet. And I can attest to that because I'm one of them as well. And she said, oh, I wish that one day I could call my husband and say, honey, I'm going to be late today because I'm working on my case. I'm going to be late today because we have a war room strategy meeting and we're preparing for that big event tomorrow. Honey, I'm working overtime because it's crunch time here. She said, I can't do that yet. So I thought, how much do we take for granted? Because usually when I hear those statements, it's more of what we call in Spanish a queja, a complaint, a pity party. Oh, honey, I've got to work late because I'm working on that case. Oh, we've got to have this war room strategy because we have that big event, right? And here is this person who's fighting. Her voice, it was not because she was suffering from a cold. It's because one of her, that she had tracheatic trauma. So, if you take any away from this, number one, we are talented. We are capable. We are loyal. Number two, we got to look beyond the disability. Look beyond the disability. Somebody mentioned, let's operate in the other's shoes or in their, right? Let's try to relate to their experience. How about that concept? You have no idea what that person's been through, what they've achieved. Think about that. Think if the situation was reversed, how you would want to be treated. And number three, let's move this allyship forward. Let's put the disabled workforce development and economic development and procurement and empowerment. Let's list it right up there with all the other things that we're trying to fix in this country. But I refuse to give up. Refuse. Don't let situations, political environments, setbacks, funding, lack of advocates, don't be deterred. What are you fighting for? I think you're fighting for what I'm fighting for, equality. Equality and a level playing field. We should all aspire to live the American dream. But I think what the American dream is being distorted. So we have that opportunity to recalibrate and to be present. And there needs to be activism for some, diplomatic efforts by others. But very simple, Noel's bullet points. It was not 3 volumes of bullet points. It was 1 slide of bullet points. We should be able to accomplish that. And the other thing is, make sure you look inwardly because we all carry implicit biases. I do, and I'm working through that. Remember that we have overt biases and implicit biases. So let's live up to that equality. Let's break more glass. And thank you for the opportunity to be real, unfiltered, and to talk about truth and opportunity. Thank you very much.